Last year, let me be clear, we welcome the contributions by Albanians who come here lawfully, but it is clear that for those who don't have a legal right to be here, that we need to work together with the Albanian government to properly relocate them back to Albania.
Jack Brereton.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. People in Stoke-on-Trent are fed up of being ignored and having their generosity taken for granted. I fully support these measures being introduced today, and will my right honourable friend confirm that these actions will be taken swiftly and that we will see deportations of those here illegally as soon as possible?
Home Secretary.
The matter is now urgent, and we need to move quickly. That's why we've brought the bill forward today. We hope to proceed with a swift timetable in Parliament. I urge all members of Parliament to support this bill, to scrutinise it effectively, but we want to get on, get the powers on the statute book and deliver them in material terms as soon as possible.
It's Cunningham.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Every week I see more asylum seekers asking for my help to progress their claims. Some have waited up to a year, most have waited several. They're left languishing at home awaiting an appointment or a decision, and are desperate to get on with their lives, many now blighted with mental and other illnesses. Isn't this latest stunt by the Home Secretary yet another attempt to direct attention away from her failure to deal with the escalating backlog, which has grown constantly for years on end?
The challenges that he's just described faced by asylum seekers is exactly a reason why he should support this bill. We want to reduce the number of people coming here illegally. We want to reduce the number of people waiting for a decision in the asylum backlog. Only by supporting this bill will we be able to support the genuine asylum seekers in this country.
John Stevenson.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome the proposed legislation. But the reality is we need the confidence of the British people in our immigration system. So therefore, to give additional confidence to local residents in places such as Carlisle and other provincial towns and cities, would the Minister agree to an immediate moratorium on the use of hotels?
Great.
When someone is waiting for an asylum decision, there is a duty on the Home Office to accommodate people and provide them with appropriate support. Therefore, we have been forced to use hotel accommodation in many towns and cities across the United Kingdom. It is important that appropriate support is provided to asylum seekers to avoid destitution and homelessness.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I have a situation in my constituency where businesses are unable to recruit staff, yet living upstairs we have asylum seekers who are unable to work. The Home Secretary has talked about the cost to the UK of housing asylum seekers. When is she going to get realistic about this and allow people waiting for their asylum claims to be decided to access the world of work?
Well, there are many people, those who have come on the ARAP scheme or the ACRS scheme are eligible to work. People who have come via our Ukrainian scheme are eligible to work in this country, and many of them do. And I encourage all members to support those members of those communities to find work with their local job centres.
Burstow.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree that despite the noise and the howls opposite, what we're forgetting is that these measures will save lives, either from people drowning in the Channel or suffocating in the back of lorries? Stopping the boat is the compassionate thing to do, and the only thing that Labour's open border policies will do is enrich people smugglers and risk death in the Channel.
Shame. Great.
Fundamentally, these are humanitarian measures that we are bringing forward, precisely with the goal that he sets out. We need to stop people dying on the Channel. We need to stop people being exploited by criminal gangs. We need to stop the criminality. That's why I encourage everybody to get behind the bill.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. As of September last year, the backlog of asylum applications stood at 115,000 and might include some economic migrants. The average waiting time for an initial decision is 20 months. Does she recognise the moral hazard here that economic migrants coming here in small boats have no incentive to guard against the risk of entering those boats because others have been protected by her government against the consequences of being returned when they get here, and that this is damaging the protections for genuine asylum seekers?
Greg.
The vast majority of people arriving via small boat have chosen to make that journey of their own free will. They have paid money. They are often and largely young, healthy men. There is no good reason in many instances for them to claim asylum, and they shouldn't be abusing our asylum rules to do so.
Tom Randall.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. On behalf of all the residents of Gedling who have raised the issue of small boats with me, may I warmly welcome the Home Secretary's statement. Will she confirm that the forthcoming legislation will end the morally reprehensible practice where we've had smugglers as a de facto part of the asylum process? And will she agree with me that given the dangerousness of the cross-channel smuggling, that a robust approach is right, fair and humane?
Yeah.
One of the root causes of this problem is the proliferation of sophisticated, well-coordinated and well-resourced criminal gangs operating across transnational boundaries on the continent. That's why we've increased the resources for the National Crime Agency. That's why we've increased cooperation and intelligence sharing with the French. And it's only by working together with European partners that we'll be able to smash the business model of the people smuggler.
Jim Shannon.
Mr Deputy Speaker, for myself, the Secretary of State, and for many, is the need to help and protect the vulnerable. Does the Secretary of State acknowledge that with the better weather will come an undoubted rise in numbers making illegal crossings? And further, does the Secretary of State believe we should engage further with the French authorities to facilitate legal migration in a more structured way? And will this bill enable those who legally seek asylum be processed efficiently, whilst sending the clear message: if you come here illegally, asylum will be automatically denied?
We've instituted some procedural requirements and limitations on legal claims and time limits for bringing those claims in the bill. That's got the aim of reducing the attempts to thwart removal, to thwart detention, and strikes the right balance between fairness and compassion.
Brendan Clark-Smith.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and on behalf of the people of Bassetlaw, can I warmly welcome this bill from the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister, which we have been crying out for. The opposition often speak of safe and legal routes, of course, which we already have, but does my right honourable friend agree with me that what they actually mean is that they support open borders, blanket approvals and amnesties for those who want to cheat our system, cheat our constituents and cheat genuine refugees?
My honourable friend puts it very well. Labour's policy on this issue is indeed open borders. A former Labour Home Secretary did grant an amnesty on asylum seekers, and it's about ensuring that illegal migration continues through the back door. That's not what the British people voted for. That's not what this Parliament's going to vote for.
Peter Grant.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It won't have escaped the Home Secretary's notice that despite what I've no doubt has been the best efforts of her government whips, they haven't found a single Member of Parliament from a Scottish constituency to have a single good word to say about this bill. The fact is that Scotland's MPs, Scotland's governments, Scotland's local authorities and Scotland's people speak as one, that our biggest complaint about the UK asylum system is that her government will not allow us to welcome as many refugees and asylum seekers as we want to. So can I make a suggestion to the Home Secretary? Will she agree, even on a temporary pilot basis, to allow the Scottish Government to take control of our asylum system? And we'll see whether the best way to deal with asylum seekers is to treat them like human beings or to treat them the way that she wants to treat them.
Hear, hear.
Well, all the SNP can point to is a track record of failure when it comes to discharging their duties for humanitarian asylum seekers. They totally failed to support Ukrainians and had to hand over responsibility to the UK government. They've totally failed to take their fair share of refugees in comparison to other parts of the UK. It's failure, failure, failure from the SNP.
Tom Hunt.
Mr Deputy Speaker, does my right honourable friend think it's fair to deduce from today's debate that the party opposite think it isn't totally fine to turn up here illegally and stay here for as long as they want? And does she also think it's fair to assume they oppose any kind of cap on refugee numbers? But does she also agree with me that it's hardly surprising, bearing in mind that the leader of this party in a different guise, actually said that there's a racist undercurrent permeates all of our immigration law. That, my right honourable friend, was the Leader of the Opposition and a human rights lawyer. Therefore, does my right honourable friend agree with me that party opposite just be honest about what they are, pro-open borders, anti any control to immigration, and completely out of step with the majority of people in this country, and they will be exposed?
My honourable friend puts it very powerfully. That's what Labour's policy is. Uncontrolled immigration, open borders, an amnesty for asylum seekers, and total disregard for what the British people want.
Patrick Grady.
But how can you know if someone is a genuine asylum seeker or not unless they're allowed to make a claim and that claim is fairly and independently assessed? When was the last time she actually met with another human being who had come here on a small vote? Has she ever listened to their stories, what they've gone through, what their hopes for the future are? Or does she just look them in the eye and tell them they're not welcome here?
Well, the reality is that we need to all work together now to find a pragmatic and compassionate and fair solution to this problem. That's why I've introduced the measures today, and that's why I encourage all members to support them.
Jonathan Edwards.
Mr Deputy Speaker, last week we saw with the revised Northern Ireland Protocol deal what progress can be made when we work collaboratively with our European partners. Rather than the sabre-rattling content of this statement, isn't it the reality that the most effective way to deal with the issue of small boats crossing the channels is to work in full collaboration with our European partners? And isn't it the case that the number of small boat crossings has increased substantially since Brexit?
Hear, hear.
Well, the reality is that we have developed much closer cooperation with our French partners on this very issue. That's why I'm pleased that we struck a good deal with them at the end of last year, and the Prime Minister is heading to Paris. I will be accompanying him later this week to work to talk further with our French partners on how to tackle this issue amongst many others.
I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for her statement today and responding to questions for an hour and 50 minutes. Thank you. We now move on to the next statement, and I call Michelle Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The creation of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology marks a watershed moment for science, innovation and technology here in the UK. We now have a government department that focuses on one single mission to make the UK a science and technology superpower. Science and technology is absolutely critical to the UK's future prosperity, security and the health and well-being of our citizens and our environment. That is why it is the central pillar of the integrated review. Countries that embrace science and technology will be prosperous and secure, home to innovators and technology companies of the future. Those that don't, won't. My vision for DCIT starts from an extraordinary position. Last year, the UK joined only China and the US in having a technology sector worth over $1 trillion. Now, despite our relative size, Britain outperforms our closest competitors, and we are a main challenger nation to the US and to China in many areas. We have 4 of the world's top 10 universities. Just 8 of our university towns are home to more unicorns than the whole of France and Germany combined. However, when other countries are investing further and faster in science and tech, we must do the same. We have an incredibly unique and powerful platform from which to grow and innovate for the benefit of the British people, which is why I have said that I plan to take a ruthless, outcome-focused approach to this new department. I will ensure that in both the short term and the long term, our work is based on improving people's daily lives in ways that they can feel and see around them. This government's vision for the future is an NHS that uses AI to find, to treat and to reduce illnesses like cancer and heart disease so that we have more time with our loved ones. We should have local transport systems that allow us to travel faster, safer and cleaner than our parents did. The schools of the future should be powered by the kinds of technology that unlock hidden talents in every child, no matter where they live. As the Department for the Future, our focus will be on how can science, technology and innovation ensure the British people live longer, safer, happier and healthier lives. Such an important goal requires immediate action, which is why in my first few weeks as Technology Secretary, I've been focused relentlessly on action and delivery. I see this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to send a clear signal around the world that Britain plans to lead the way in science, innovation and technology. The key steps that we have taken out follow. Yesterday, we published the UK Science and Technology Framework, which sets out our goals and visions for science and technology in an enduring framework that will see us through to 2030. It has been developed in close collaboration with UK science and technology sector and represents a commitment to scaling our ambitions and delivering the most critical action needed to secure strategic advantages through science and technology. The framework is the strategic anchor that the government policy will deliver against, and which the government will then hold itself accountable to. It sets out 10 things that the government must do to sustain strategic advantage in science and technology. They are, firstly, identifying the technologies that are most critical to the UK's objectives. Secondly, signalling the UK's science and technology strengths and ambitions, both at home and abroad, to attract talent, investment and boost our global influence. Thirdly, boosting private and public investment in research and development for economic growth and better productivity. Fourthly, building on the UK's already amazing talent and skills base. Number 5, financing innovative science and technology companies. 6, using government procurement to stimulate innovation in key sectors and technologies. 7, tackling international opportunities to shape the global science and technology landscape through strategic international engagement, diplomacy and partnerships. 8, ensuring that the science and technology objectives are supported by access to the best physical and digital infrastructure that will attract talent, investment and discoveries. 9, leveraging post-Brexit freedoms to create world-leading pro-innovation regulation and influence global technological standards. 10, creating a pro-innovation culture throughout the UK's public sector to improve the way our public services run. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, we've also taken immediate steps. The delivery of this new framework will begin immediately with an initial raft of projects worth around £500 million, of which £370 million is new money, which will ensure that the UK has the skills and the infrastructure to take a global lead in game-changing technologies. This includes £250 million worth of investment in 3 truly transformational technologies to build on the UK's leadership in AI, in quantum technologies and in engineering biology, so they can help a range of industries tackle the biggest global challenges like climate change and healthcare. These form part of our commitment to the 5 key technologies, which also includes semiconductors and future telecoms. We've also published the Sir Paul Nurse Review, the independent review of the research, development and innovation organisations landscape, with recommendations to make the most of UK's research organisations, testing different models of funding science to support a range of innovative institutional models, like focused research organisations working with industry and partners to open up new funding opportunities. Up to £50 million will also spur co-investment in science from the private sector and, of course, philanthropists to drive the discoveries of the future, subject to, of course, business cases. The government is already in talks with the Smith Futures, a philanthropic initiative. I've lost my words, so I need a bit of water. Initiatives of Eric and Wendy Smith about additional support of up to £20 million as part of this work, £117 million of existing funding to create hundreds of new PhDs for AI researchers and £80 million to find next generation of AI leaders around the world. A £50 million uplift to world-class labs funding to help research institutes and universities to improve facilities so that UK researchers have access to the very best labs and equipment that they need to keep producing that world-class science. A £10 million uplift to UK Innovation and Science Seed Fund, totalling £50 million to boost the UK's next technology and science startups, who could be, of course, the next Apple, the next Google, the next Tesla. Plans set up Exascale supercomputer facility are outlined as well. This will be the most powerful compute capability which could solve problems as complex as nuclear fusion, as well as a programme to provide dedicated compute capability for important AI research as part of our initial response to the Future of Compute review, which was also published yesterday. $9 million in government funding will be used to support the establishment of Quantum Computing Research Centre based in Daresbury in the North West. Now, in terms of next steps, Mr Deputy Speaker, before I conclude, each of the 10 framework strands has a department tasked with putting in place a clear action plan, which will then be accountable to during this year. Delivery against these plans will be overseen by the National Science and Technology Council, which will hold departments to account and drive pace. Alongside development of these ambitious plans and framework, we have also set out our initial work under each of the 10 priorities, which will include our skills and talent base. And in terms of our priority technologies, we'll be developing a pro-innovation approach to regulating AI, which will be detailed in our white paper in the coming weeks. When we turn to investment on R&D, we'll be responding to the Tickell review on the research bureaucracy and also to support Nurse's review of research development and innovation landscape. And we were working with industry and partners to increase that inward investment by the summer recess of this year. On financing innovative science and technology companies, we'll be building upon the strong track record of the British Business Bank to strengthen support for the UK's science technology companies. This is an ambitious plan that focuses on getting actions out the door now, but also focuses on a plan for the future. This government is both reactive but also crucially proactive when it comes to science and technology to ensure that we can be a superpower by 2030.
Sian Warra.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And let me begin by welcoming the Secretary of State to her place and thanking her for the advance notice of her statement. And I welcome this framework, Mr Deputy Speaker. It will take pride of place on my virtual bookshelf next to the government's innovation strategy, the R&D roadmap, the science plan, numerous grand challenges, industrial strategies, sector deals, 2 UKRI reorganisations. We have seen 9 changes of science minister in 5 years. Britain is a world-leading science nation. We deserve a framework with a longer shelf life than a lettuce, especially given the shortage of salad items under this government. But it is good to see the government setting out principles for identifying the scientific capabilities we need to protect and grow, and the outcomes we wish to see from science, as well as seeking to increase STEM skills in teaching and support for startups and spin-outs. On the eve of International Women's Day, and as a chartered engineer myself, let me enthusiastically welcome the ambition to diversify the science and technology workforce. Let us work together to make that ambition a reality. I do have a number of questions for the Secretary of State. So how do the 5 critical technologies in the framework relate to the 17 sensitive areas in the National Security and Investment Bill and the 5 key growth areas in the autumn statement? And when will each critical technology have the appropriate regulatory framework she talks about? Science-driven industries critical to our future prosperity, such as space, autonomous vehicles, batteries and steel, are not even mentioned. Labour has committed to an Industrial Strategy Council on a statutory footing. Does the government have an industrial strategy? Now, the framework rightly says that procurement is key to innovation. Why then has the government objected to our amendments to the procurement bill to ensure procurement is not captured by cronyism? The government committed to 22 billion of science funding by 2027. Will she say now what is the current funding commitment? How much of the 370 million mentioned in the framework is truly new? And if so, how is she paying for it? The government promised that science spend will double, but the framework talks of raising science spend outside the Greater South East by only 40%. This suggests our regional centres of innovation will not benefit from this increased funding. And is that all she has to say about the importance of regional innovation? One of the clusters which the Science Minister talks up so much. Now, startups and scale-ups are the key to sustainable green growth, but the 10 million uplift to the seed fund mentioned here would not meet the early stage funding requirements of one future Google. So will the government adopt the recommendations of Labour's Startup and Scale-up review to drive innovative growth across our country? But, Mr Deputy Speaker, the biggest question is what is not in this framework. Horizon Europe, the world's biggest science programme. Did she really think she could get to a statement without even mentioning it? Thanks to the Tories, our brightest and best UK scientists are still having to choose between the funding they desperately need and the country they love. British research, British business is feeling the chilling impact of not being part of the world's greatest scientific collaboration. Can the Secretary of State confirm now that now the Windsor framework has been agreed, Horizon Association will follow? And specifically, will the Chancellor's budget next week include association funding? Mr Deputy Speaker, Labour believe innovation and science are critical to building national and regional economies which are strong and self-sufficient. We see a clear path from investing in scientific research to the jobs you can raise a family on. With our ambitious national missions, Labour would stoke the innovation engine to drive high-skilled growth, access new and diverse talent pools, and catalyse regions which have been left out of science investment. I fear this framework is another wish list, designed to be shelved or scrapped at the earliest convenience by a government addicted to sticking plaster policies. Only a Labour government with our long-term industrial strategy will deliver the science sector and the jobs our country needs.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Honourable Member for her comments, but the reality is it is this government that is actually here today delivering those jobs and that better future for the British public. As I said in my opening, we are focusing on actions here today, but also a strategic long-term approach to ensure that we are a science and technology superpower by 2030. She talks of there being more technologies than the 5 that we have identified. Of course there are. They are the key strategic ones that we have identified, but there is a great deal of work going on by both me and my ministerial team as well. Now, in addition to the funding question, we are actually investing $20 billion by 24-25, which we have said on record, and 370 that we announced yesterday is, of course, new spending commitment that we hadn't outlined before. And in terms of how is this going to be spread geographically across the nation, we've made a strategic commitment to ensure that 55% of spend is outside of the South East. Now, the framework that we set out was just one part of the work that my department is doing. Let's not forget, Mr Deputy Speaker, this is a department that was established just 4 weeks ago. In 1 month, we have published a comprehensive framework plan, but we have also got on with key action to drive this agenda forward. This is a government that means business. We have worked very hard in the last few weeks to talk collaboratively with industry, with researchers, and I'm not going to take the word of the opposition in terms of what is wrong with today. I'm going to look at what do the experts say, what do the people on the ground say. Well, let's have a look for a minute, Mr Deputy Speaker. So Professor Sir Boyd, President of the Royal Society for Biology, said, "Science and technology is already a central plank of modern life. Putting this centre stage in the government strategy is essential and welcome." Professor Julia Black, President of the British Academy, said that D6's announcement reaffirms the government's ambition to put the UK at the forefront of global research, development and innovation. I could go on, Mr Deputy Speaker, all day long, because this announcement has been wholeheartedly welcomed. And in terms of Horizon, this was not an announcement about Horizon. This was an announcement about our framework, which is up there on the screen. But to the fairness, I will answer the question anyway. We have not changed our position on Horizon. For the last 2 years, we have tried to associate. It was in that original deal. And we welcome the comments that have come from the EU. Of course, terms would have to be favourable for the UK. We've lost 2 years, and we'd have to ensure that there's value for money for the taxpayer. We can't wait around another 2 years because we want to put our researchers first, which is why we've done the responsible and right thing, and we've worked up a plan B which stands ready to go should we need it. But our position has not changed on Horizon, and we look forward to continuing our conversations with the EU.
Ray Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. It is a great pleasure to welcome my right honourable friend and her ministerial team to their positions. It is some years since the Science Minister stood at the dispatch box as a Secretary of State, and I hope that she and her team will have a very successful tenure in that position. And I welcome warmly the priority that the government is giving to science and technology at one of the most exciting times for science and technology since the first industrial revolution. My committee looks forward to welcoming my right honourable friend to discuss her work and the framework. But will she answer a few specific questions that arise? First of all, can she commit that the £1.65 billion from the science budget that was returned to the Treasury last week as part of the supplementary estimates will be returned back to the science budget and has not been lost? Secondly, I was interested in what she had to say on Horizon. Will she say when the negotiations will begin? And given she quite rightly mentions that they can't go on forever, how long would she allow the negotiations to continue before Plan B will be enacted? And finally, what mechanisms are in place to ensure that in areas like battery technology, for example, which is a responsibility of her department, the business department and the energy department, that there is a united and coherent approach across government so that investors know what the policy is and who to deal with?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I too and my ministerial team look forward to working with the Honourable Members Committee, and it was good to speak to him yesterday. As I said back then, funding remains available to finalise association with EU programmes. In the event that we do not associate, UK researchers and businesses will receive at least as much money as they would have done during Horizon over the spending review. During this period, the government has stepped in to continue to support the UK's world-leading R&D sector, and we've extended the Horizon Guarantee, which was announced yesterday, to the end of June 2023. And so far, the government has provided £882 million to date via UK RI through the guarantee. And the government will still deliver its commitment to invest £20 billion per annum in research and development by 2024-25, and that is not impacted by the £1.6 billion that the Honourable Member references. In terms of Horizon, as I said a moment ago, we have not changed our position. We continue to try to associate with Horizon, and we look forward to engaging in more deep conversations and more meaningful conversations with the EU on what is possible as we work up the potential options that are available. And I will keep both the Honourable Member and this House informed as much as we possibly can as plans develop.
El Moynihan.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the creation of this new government department, and I welcome the Secretary of State to her position and thank her for advance sight of her statement. The framework should very much be seen as a starting point, and I've got to say Secretary of State's comments on Horizon are not going to give the sector much assurance at the moment. And this view is echoed by the Royal Society, who have said the extension of the funding underwrite is a welcome safety net, but it is yet another sticking plaster when the ultimate goal needs to be speedy association. Sir Paul Nurse's review also describes Horizon Europe Association as essential. So we need some time frame for when a decision is going to be taken on Horizon. It's now 3 years that we've been hearing from the government that it's their intention and their hope that there will be this association, but we need a time frame. Dr Tim Bradshaw of the Russell Group has said that £370 million of new funding falls far short of the £1.6 billion that had been earmarked for research collaborations with the European Union. So it would be useful to know how this government can continue promoting science in the UK when it's driving down funding compared to what it was before Brexit. The framework commits to establishing competitive advantage in attracting international talent to the UK. But Royal Society analysis has shown that work and study visas are up to 6 times higher than comparable nations in science. So what plans does the government have to reduce visa fees in line with other science nations? The Secretary of State has chosen future communications as an area of focus. In 2020, there was a $500 million stake invested in OneWeb to support such communications. So can the Secretary of State update the House on the progress of the OneWeb investment in terms of future communications? And finally, we've been asking about a semiconductor strategy. When is this likely to be published?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. In terms of Horizon, the Honourable Member seems to be rewriting history, which is slightly disappointing because we have tried for 2 years to associate it. It was the EU that linked this with the Northern Ireland Protocol, not this government. And so now we stand ready to continue those conversations. In terms of the £1.6 billion, of course, this was earmarked for Horizon, and we weren't able to affiliate and associate with Horizon, hence why that money is no longer available, but we stand committed in terms of our £20 billion record levels of investment that we've pledged for 24-25. In terms of the conversation around attracting talent, we think it is very important that we are supporting industry and those opportunities available so that there are those jobs for people to come to in this country and to want to forge a life here. In terms of the semiconductor strategy, this will be out imminently, and we've been doing a great deal of work to make sure that it comes out in exactly the right place.
Tracy Crouch.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Secretary is aware that there are acute shortages of teachers in STEM subjects, and she may well also be aware that we on the Science and Technology Select Committee looked at the lack of diversity in the STEM workforce, but there are limited references to this in the framework. Yesterday, the Health Minister set out plans to increase women working in STEM. The Prime Minister has made it clear that he wants to see all children studying maths until 18. And I know the Education Secretary is passionate about STEM subjects in school, but it's not entirely clear where her department sits in all of this. So could the Secretary of State clarify who is the lead department on making sure that we improve STEM uptake and indeed diversification in both the school and workforce?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The way that the framework will operate is that in many of the areas there will be a hold them to account and working in collaboration with them. So if you take the education and skills point, the Department for Education will lead on that. But of course we will work very closely with them because we have such a vested interest in ensuring that this delivers and that we can meet that goal of a science and technology superpower by 2030. But I do want to reassure my honourable friend that the examples given in the framework are to provide a flavour of what every department will be doing. They are not an exhaustive list. They will be coming up with more policies and more ideas over the coming years, but they will all have to link back to this framework because this is a government that is going to be strategic and relentlessly focused.
Back along, Bailey.
Deputy Speaker, the Secretary says that she has an ambition about sending a message around the world that the UK is a leader in science and technology, and I share that ambition, but sadly today the Sir Paul Nurse review into research and development stated that funding provided by government was limited and below that of other competitive nations. In fact, the UK is 27th out of 36 OECD nations on government funding of R&D. If the Secretary is serious about this ambition, and I truly hope she is, will she commit today, and it'd be helpful if she listened to what I was saying while I was asking the question, will she commit today to assuring this House that by next year the UK will be #1 of all of the OECD nations on government funding of R&D spending?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. What I can do is reaffirm the commitment that by 24-25 we will have record levels of R&D spent in this billion, rather than just simply stand here and announce endless pots of money. We are being much more strategic in how we spend our funding and working in collaboration with the sector when we come up with those policies and those plans.
Stephen Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the statement from my right honourable friend and wholeheartedly support it. But can I remind the House that science is a global endeavour, and for us to deliver on our ambitions set out in the framework, we're going to need to work with our partners. Can I ask her that she looks at particularly at the visa system, to ensure it does not act as a barrier to attracting world-leading scientists and technicians to the UK to help us deliver on those ambitions?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I completely agree with my honourable friend, and that's why part of the framework is about our international collaboration with partners. And of course, we need to grow our own talent to a point that my other right honourable friend made before, but we also need to be attracting that talent, and we need to ensure that our visa system, as well as many other factors, allow and enable that, and I will continue to work across government on that point.
Daniel Zeigner.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Horizon is about collaboration, not just money. Can I urge her to impress that upon the Prime Minister? But she'll also be aware the confidence in the life sciences sector is fragile at the moment, whether it be R&D tax credits, whether it be VPAS, or whether it be Horizon. And as an example, we've fallen from 4th to 10th in terms of the best place to do late-place clinical trials. Yeah. What's she going to do about that?
Good question. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. This is an area that my honourable friend has taken leadership on, and we are working very closely with the Department of Health and Social Care, because I completely agree with my honourable friend. There are challenges that we do need to address, and over the coming weeks and months you will see that this is a government taking action.
John Redwood.
How is the government going to respond to America's Inflation Reduction Act, which offers such a wide range of tax breaks, favourable government contracts, favourable regulation, to onshore much more science and technology in America, and threatens diverting investment from the UK?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It is, of course, important that we create a favourable economic climate for business to prosper, and in terms of regulation, this is something that will be at the heart of our work. We already commissioned Patrick Vallance to publish a report into emerging tech and the regulation of that, and that report will be out imminently. And we will be looking and doing deep dives into how we can really get the regulatory framework right to support innovation, technology and science that is based here in the UK.
Leila Moran.
Mr Deputy Speaker, may I welcome the Secretary of State to her place and her whole team. I hope she'll join me in celebrating the achievements of Oxfordshire's researchers, not just at the universities, but also the great science parks. They are, I'm sure, full square behind her vision. But one of the big issues they raise with me is the attracting talent strand. I'm glad she's raised it. Horizon Europe is a big part of it, but it wasn't just the money, it was also the ecosystem for those researchers. It's equally important. May I impress on her the importance of this? But also, can she look again at the visa system, specifically the costs? Royal Society analysis shows that getting a visa for these researchers is about 6 times higher to come to our country compared to our competitors. Will she speak to the Home Office about this?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. What we really want to do is provide the research community with complete clarity and certainty, that certainty that they've not been able to have for the last 2 years while we've waited around trying to associate for Horizon. So we do want that process to be relatively swift, which I said at the beginning. And in terms of visas, of course we want to be attracting the brightest and the best. And part of the announcement yesterday was about how we're not just going to wait for them to want to come here, how we're going to be proactive and utilise our global talent network to really go out and find them and persuade them of the value of locating and working here in the UK.
James Gray.
My right honourable friend and constituency neighbour, who I warmly welcome to a well-deserved place, will sure agree with me that one area of outstanding science we have in the United Kingdom is in the Arctic and Antarctic. Our polar scientific research is superb, both through the National Environmental Research Council, the British Antarctic Survey, and the 78 universities who have first-class polar research departments. I haven't yet had a chance to read her framework, but what more can the government do under the framework to encourage polar research, which is so superb in this country, but does need more coordination and, of course, always needs more encouragement by the government.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And may I commend my honourable friend for all of the great work that he does and he has done consistently over the years in this area. And I know that he held a session in Parliament to once again dive deep into this issue and raise the profile. Of course, the work is important geopolitically, but also to address net zero. We work closely with partners, which is at the key to the framework, our approach globally, not just internally.
Vice Chairman. Mr Deputy Speaker, can I declare an interest that I have a long life experience and a liking and loving of the higher education system. And I also co-chair with Lord Norton the Higher Education Westminster Commission. Could I say that I like a lot of the stuff here today that she said, both in terms of having this much more focused department. But can I warn her that my honourable friend, the member for Cambridge, is right. Morale in the higher education sector is low, and we need to put that right. We also need the resources and good management in universities, and we must make universities open to dialogue, partnership with local. Please look at that innovation and enterprise very closely.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. In fact, what my honourable friend has pointed out there is at the heart of the Nurse Review, talking about diversification of the research sector and how we can open up those opportunities that he outlined. As a former higher education minister, I know only too well the challenges that universities can face in this area. And my door is always an open door. My policy is always an open door policy. And I work very closely and in collaboration with those universities to make sure that we can break down some of those barriers and create those opportunities.
Andrew Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome my right honourable friend's statement. The third point in her framework plan was to grow private and public investment to boost productivity. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that it's not just the development of new ideas that is crucial, but also their implementation too, as that is how productivity will be boosted? So will she be ensuring a focus upon implementation and scale-ups right across government, because all departments can play a role in delivering progress?
Yeah.
Thank you. My honourable friend is completely right. It isn't just about the funding, it is about that implementation and that focus and that strategic approach, which is why this government wants to lead from the front. And also, we need to particularly focus not just on start-ups, but on scale-ups, which is one of the things that has held us back here in the UK, especially in the tech sector, and will be one of the things that my department plays a critical role in supporting the industry to tackle.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. York has already framed its future economy, whether Bio-Yorkshire, 4,000 more jobs for our city and region, whether digital and advanced rail, 5,500 jobs currently there and the ability to grow, or the emerging digital creative sector, which is a very exciting innovation across York. However, government has been slow at giving that support and getting the money out the door. We're frustrated because we want to press ahead. So how will she deliver for our city?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I pledge to meet with the honourable member and listen carefully to the challenges that she's experienced so that we can address those, not just in her area, but in other areas too.
Matt Warman.
Speaker, I welcome the joining together of these strands of government, not least because of the broadband programme. She has the opportunity to truly be the Secretary of State for growth, and that is hugely important. But does she agree with me that actually it is the UK's leading role in the regulatory space that allows us potentially to be a world leader in regulation of areas such as AI, where there is a vital national security angle as well as a vital economic opportunity that we can seize at this unique moment in that technology's history?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Exactly, as my honourable friend points out, this is about regulation to create innovation. And we need to get those regulatory frameworks right, but we also need to look at the